Aaron Torres joining us here, bottom of hour number 1 on a Friday. Always brightens the day, especially on a Friday. My sky needs a little brightening at the moment because it's cloudy. He is the host of the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast and on Fox Sports Radio. AT, how's life treating you these days? Our transfer portal news got a little wider for Arkansas basketball earlier this week, so I found myself going back to your basketball transfer website again. I thought I might have been done with that for a little bit, but no.
First of all, it's great. It is interesting. You mentioned a cloudy day in Arkansas. A little cloudy here in California, too. We have in California, I know, Phil, you've traveled a little bit out here. We have what's called the June gloom, which is that it tends to stay a little gloomy throughout the morning. So I guess it came a few weeks early this week. But I'm good, and you're right. I mean, the transfer stuff is interesting. We're at the point now where really there's only about, I would say, probably 5-6 real difference makers. But look, we know Coach Muss, and it's interesting. I know we're going to get into it in a minute, but I was talking to his new assistant coach, Gus Argenal, last night. I'll have that interview out at some point today. But Coach Argenal kind of talked a lot about we're still working on this roster for next season. And so, yes, there are still pieces to be added. I don't know that it's going to be an Audi's Tony, Chris Likes, play 34 minutes a game kind of guy. But, this is the thing, and this is the reality with both not only Coach Muss, but really this transfer portal world in general that we live in is until you get those kids on campus, and even once you get them there, who's to say for sure, but that for the most part, the roster is always changing, always evolving. And again, it's not just Arkansas, it's pretty much everywhere in college hoops.
So you'd mentioned about Gus Argenal. I mean, I know he's had a few jobs that have brought him towards the middle of the country, but Arkansas is the farthest east that he's ever been as far as where his job is located. I'm sure he's traveled all over the country as a basketball coach, but he's a West Coast guy for the most part. And where did you meet him? And tell us about the newest assistant coach under Eric Musselman, Gus Argenal.
Yeah, no, he was with Coach Muss, as I know you guys know, for 2 years at Nevada, and obviously I spent a little time. That's how I got to know Coach Muss, and that's how I got to know Gus too. And what I would say, and it was something that Gus and Coach Argenal referenced in his introductory press conference. Yes, he is a quote-unquote West Coast guy, but maybe even more so at Nevada than at Arkansas. Coach Muss was a portal guy through and through even back then, maybe even more so just because he couldn't recruit the caliber of high school player like a Moses Moody, Devo Davis, K.K. Robinson, Jalen Williams. And so when you do that, you got to have connections in all parts of the country, all parts of, the AAU circuit, because obviously the AAU guys are the ones that help the college players with the portal stuff. And so to me, it's not really as much of a concern. Now, yes, you do have to hit the ground running and build those relationships in the state of Arkansas. But what I would also say is two things. One, you're always going to recruit the transfer portal. And with the success that the transfers this year had, I think they are going to continue to have success recruiting transfers at Arkansas under Coach Muss. But then, two, on top of that, it sure helps, like I said, that you now have Moses Moody and Devo Davis and all these guys to sell. This is not coming into Arkansas 2 off seasons ago where you kind of have to explain who you are and why you didn't recruit high school players and why it'll still work if you come to the state university. So, yes, it's a question a few fans have asked me. I'm not as big of a concern about that just because, look, if this was 6 years ago, Phil, yeah, I'd be a little concerned. But we live in the transfer portal world. This is just how recruiting is done now. I wonder how many high school players these elite top programs are going to be recruiting at all in a couple of years, let alone locally, nationally, whatever. But it's going to be an interesting thing to follow. But, yes, it's not as much of a concern to me as it would be, say, 4 or 5 years ago.
There were some folks that felt, I don't know, concern is the right thing, but, they were wondering because there's been a couple, a little turnover from the coaching staff from this last season. Corey Williams goes to Texas Tech. David Patrick leads to Oklahoma. And that maybe there's this narrative that Eric Musselman is difficult to work for. And I don't know if that's necessarily the case if you just look at a couple of the guys that are still on his staff, Anthony Ruda and Clay Mosier. I mean, Ruda's been with him forever. Mosier and he go back a long, long way. And it's obvious here that he and Gus Argenal have a great relationship too. I think more than anything, you see a lot of loyalty from coaches that work for Eric Musselman, and the ones who leave, it's just like that's also just part of coaching. It's it's a gypsy-like profession.
Well, and, I said this on another radio station the other day, and I want to be careful how I phrase it because I don't want to compare Eric Musselman to the man that I'm about to compare him to. But you know who else is really hard to work for? Nick Saban. And Nick Saban, but I think everyone kind of gets it. I'm not comparing Eric Musselman to Nick Saban. We're about 7 national championships short of that. But, what I would say is these great guys are really hard to work for. But one thing I talked to Coach Gus about yesterday, and again, I wish this interview was available. We're having some technical difficulties with it, is, it's worth it when the results are reflective of the sweat equity put in, and it's one thing if your quote unquote boss is tough to work for, whether it is Nick Saban, Urban Meyer, whoever, and you're going 5-7 in football or you're going 12-20 in basketball. But when Eric Musselman, everywhere he goes, it's immediate success, and I would add it's sustained success. This was something I think gets a little bit lost in the shuffle is, there was an Elite Eight run last year. But a couple things. One, Eric Musselman, Coach Muss's first season at Arkansas, you and I both know, Phil, that if Isaiah Joe doesn't get hurt, that team is comfortably in the tournament picture. Now, of course, there's no tournament played. But then even before that, you have a Sweet 16 at Nevada where they're basically a play away from going to the Elite Eight. You have another season where they're ranked in the top 10. And so, yes, it's hard to work for a lot of people. But when you see the results come out of what you put into it, I think it is worth it for many guys in the end. And as far as guys leaving, I think we got to remember every situation is a little bit different. I don't know the exact deal with David Patrick. I don't know the exact deal with Corey Williams. But, Chris Crutchfield last year, at the time we thought he wanted to be a Division II head coach. He wanted to be a head coach. He felt this was the best path, on and on and on and on and on. And, Corey Williams, who knows what happened with him, but David Patrick was kind of the lead guy. As you said, Clay Mosier has been there entrenched, and maybe he felt like, okay, this is a good opportunity for me to kind of move up the totem pole. And so I don't want to speak for guys. I don't have the answers to all these questions. But one thing I talked to Gus about, and I'm sure the other guys would kind of agree with, is just the idea that there are a lot of people that are hard to work for, but when the results are what they are under Coach Muss, it makes it easy because as long as those days are, as long as those recruiting meetings are, as tough as those practices are, when you're going to the Elite Eight, it's pretty freaking awesome.
Mm-hmm. Aaron Torres joining us here on Halftime. AT, I want to go back to the transfer portal just for a moment, talk a little bit more Razorback basketball here. The way the team, we've talked a lot about this week. What does Coach Musselman do? What would you do? Because right now you got 3 open roster spots, counting some of the moves here. And AT, when you look at this roster, you got 10 guys here, and all 10 of these guys, I don't want to say guaranteed minutes, but all 10 of these guys are going to be fighting for minutes. So if you're Coach Musselman, do you try to go out and fill these other 3 try to fill these other spots with transfer guys in the transfer portal or find some walk-ons? What would you do in this situation? And if you do go into the portal, who are some guys to keep an eye on?
So, Matt, this is a fascinating and a very good question. I'll tell you why. Because you guys know, I think one of the reasons you like having is I don't always just go with the popular narrative because I don't want to get yelled at on social media. And I think this is one of the byproducts of the one-time transfer rule, is there was a time where even at Nevada, Eric Musselman would fill all 13 scholarships knowing, hey, I'm going to lose 4 guys next year. I want to have 4 guys in my program practicing, understanding who we are and what we do to get better for next season. And so when everyone says, we're doing this for the players, well, you know what's going to happen, Matt? There are going to be a lot of programs that just say, I'm not filling 13 scholarships because I can't keep all 13 guys happy. And everyone, has this idea that everybody that enters the portal ends up with a scholarship, ends up with a good situation. Not only is that not true, but what we're now seeing is a trickle-down effect where there's a lot of really good high school players that now can't get college scholarship spots. And I hear a lot of, well, it's the same number of scholarships. They all get filled. It's like, but they don't, though, and it's because of this exact reason that there's no longer kind of this redshirt option. And so what I'm really fascinated about, not just for this season, not just for Arkansas, but for the next 4 or 5 years, what becomes of the redshirt? There's a lot of programs that have had a ton of success. By the way, Arkansas this year with Vanover and Note, but then Baylor. I've talked to Scott Drew about this. The redshirt is a huge part of what they do in that program. I think it was 5 out of the 8 guys that were awesome against Arkansas all took a redshirt year at some point at Baylor. Are they still going to be able to convince players to do that? Now, maybe Baylor has had the track record, so they'll be able to. But most kids don't want to come and sit for a year. Most kids don't want to just practice and be in the weight room. And so it's a fascinating thing, Matt. And I think coaches are still trying to wrap their head around, what do we do with all these scholarships? Because we need enough to practice. We need enough in case we have an injury or two, but we can't have too many, because if we have too many, we're going to have a bunch of guys unhappy, and they're going to end up transferring as is. And so I would think if there's 10 scholarship players, in my head, I personally would only want to fill one more, but I don't know if that's how Coach Muss is going to view this. But I'm just telling you right now, Matt, it's a great question, because this is something that every program in college basketball is struggling with right now, of what is the right balance of, we need enough guys to practice, we need enough guys because injuries are inevitable, but if we have too many, there's no red shirt. We can't,
Exactly.
we can't do things the way that we used to do.
Exactly. That's going to be really intriguing for how this thing goes down, because right now, I mean, he's got a good roster filled right now with the emergence of Devo, and the transfers that have already come in, Amude, Likes, Tony. Coach, it's a good problem. Is it fair to say it's a good problem to have right now? I mean, you've got a solid roster where you could be fine, but to your point, it's a balancing act of like what's the right move to make here.
Well, and it's just, I'll be quick, so if we want to get in one more question, we can.
Yeah.
But I just think it's going to be so fascinating to see a school like Baylor, a school like Villanova. The red shirt is a huge part of what they've done through the years, and it's the way they've sustained success. And I just don't know if you're going to be able to do it anymore, or is Baylor still going to go into a kid's home and say, hey, you're not going to be ready next year. Come here, trust the process. We have seen this happen and have success before. I just don't know what the answer is going to be, Matt. I think it's fascinating. I really do.
Last thing before we let you go, Mother's Day this weekend, we've asked our listeners the question,
Sure.
What makes your mom awesome? What makes Mama Torres awesome?
Oh, man. Everyone thinks they have the best mom in the world. I can't compare her to anybody else, but my mom is incredible. And what's really funny about me, guys, is my mom is actually the reason that I love sports. She's actually coming today. She's got a place on the West Coast now, so she'll be coming to visit for the weekend. But, my dad was more of a cars, fix stuff kind of guy. Guys, I can about fix the light bulb, and that's it. But she grew up, sitting on the couch watching baseball with her dad, Mickey Mantle, whoever, blah, 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 blah. And she's the one that passed on the sports team to me. And it's funny because I think we all look at what we do, the three of us, and we love what we do. And I really can't envision doing anything other than what I do, which is obviously talk, write, consume sports. And even in my free time, I'm always just thinking about games, recruiting, basketball, football, whatever. And it's my life. It really is. And so I get that gene from her. So that's not what makes her special, but that kind of gives you a little – excuse me, I almost dropped the phone there. Gives you a little insight into what our relationship is. And she's the best, man. And also, I must say, she can throw down a margarita or two. We're really excited to celebrate this.
I need to meet Mama
No,
Torres.
I didn't. Matt, you know what's funny? I wasn't even thinking about your margarita prowess when I said that, Matt. It was just the first thing that popped into my head. But, she, as we've gotten older and, she kind of sees her kids are doing okay and she doesn't have to worry about everything, she's loosened up, and we'll probably hit a happy hour later. And like I said, we'll try to recreate the Matt Jenkins, hot dog eating contest or whatever it was. So,
Well,
Awesome.
whenever you come to Arkansas, you just need to bring her with her, and then me and her, I'll teach her how to drink margaritas.
Or an
guys, real quick, do I have half a second? Can I just say something really quick?
Shoot.
Okay, I'll be very brief. But so I said she bought a place out here on the West Coast. It's actually in Nevada, whatever. But she drove across country, and I'm not kidding. I don't think I've told you guys. She stopped in Fort Smith, Arkansas in about middle of March, early March, and she loved it. So I'm so happy. So that's my tie. That's her tie to the Razorbacks. But she said Fort Smith was beautiful. She was only there for about 24 hours, but she had a blast. She thought it was beautiful.
Heck yeah.
That's awesome. All right. Well, she got a place east. She got a
And then
place
she
west.
said there
Now
was
she
just
needs
this
a place.
big guy stumbling through the streets, and it kind of scared her, so she had to go back to the hotel. No, that part didn't happen.
It was probably me.
Well, she needs a place in
yeah, that's
Mid-America. Fort Smith would be perfect for her. AT, appreciate you,
All right.
man.
Thanks,
Great
man.
stuff. Thank you.
Guys, we'll do it next week. Thank you.
All right.
You got it. Aaron Torres from the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. Download it anywhere you download your latest podcast episode. And he was going to have Gus Argenal whenever you can get that last one up. Want to remind you about the Yum Dinger. Your largemouth bass have spawned at ponds and lakes all over the state. And the best lure to catch them is the Yum Dinger, made by Pradco in Fort Smith. 3-inch, 4-inch, 5-inch, 6-inch sizes. Wacky rigging the 5-inch model just can't be beat for spawning bass. You'll find these in tackle boxes of bass anglers all over the U.S. and all over the world. You'll find the Yum Dinger at Walmart, Bass Pro Shops, Academy, Lurenet.com, and tackle stores all over the place. The Yum Dinger.
Wow.
877-377-6963. Right back.